was one of them. Cleavage was another. What else did we use? Color. Fracture. There's a couple more. Come on. What else did we use? Cleavage, fracture, color, luster is what you guys come up with.
Hardness.
Hardness was another one. And there's one more biggie that I used. Streak. Right? We're not Frank the Tank, right? Streak is the color of the powder left behind. Hardness, harder than your fingernail, harder than glass, harder than a penny. Right? Whatever mineral can scratch which one. We use those 6 different properties to identify minerals. A rock is something that's made up of more than one mineral. So inside of each rock, there's multiple minerals. But we only use 2 properties. One has to do with texture, which is on the left-hand side of the board. So this is called texture. And I'll talk to you about the crystal size as well. So texture or crystal size. The second has to do with the color of the rock. And the colors get funny names. I know you don't try to use funny names. I don't try to throw different things at you. But for whatever reason, because of the Latin, we're going to have different names for the colors of igneous rocks. We've already talked about the texture or the crystal size. What do I know about extrusive? Where does it cool? Cools outside the earth. If an extrusive rock cools outside on the earth, what's going to happen to the speed at which it cools? Cools. What's that, Jacob? Faster. Because it cools faster, what do we know about the size of the crystal? It's going to be smaller. So my extal size, right, because I'm lazy. And when I say small, I mean microscopic. Is that microscopic? Right? Yeah. Close enough, right? Close enough. They're small. They're microscopic in size because we're cooling rapidly. Right? So when we go to identify different rocks, you're going to have to look to see, can I see minerals? And what I mean by can I see minerals, I have to look closely at the rock and I have to see, is there color variation in that rock? Is there a lot of color variation in that rock? If there's a lot of color variation in that rock, most likely I'm going to think that it's going to be extrusive. Sorry, it's going to be intrusive. If you can't tell a color variation in that rock, you're most likely dealing with an extrusive igneous rock. Their mineral size are so small that you can't detect when one mineral starts and one mineral stops. Some of the samples are much bigger and have much bigger crystals and they're easier to detect. Right? So that would be the other case. So extrusive, they cool outside, they cool fast. Crystal size is small. What do I need to know about intrusive then?
Cools inside.
Cools inside. If it cools inside, what about it? Cools slower. If it cools slower, what's going to happen to my crystal size?
Big.
And when I say bigger, I'm meaning about the size. Let's go half the size of a dime or small. I mean, about the size of a PB. Half the size of a BB. About half the size of a BB. How big are BB? You ready to shoot BB guns anymore? Do you guys shoot BB guns?
I do.
Have you ever seen a BB though?
Yes.
What's another way of talking about a BB that would make more sense? Like, we're talking small in size. BBs. Pellets. Some people shoot pellets. Who's not a pellet or a BB gun shooter? What can we talk about that's about the same size? It's bigger than a grain of sand.
Beans in a bean bag.
Beans in a bean bag?
Yeah.
About half the size of a bean in a bean bag.
Instead of a nose
Like a
ring?
pea, but I would say even smaller than a pea, like a half the size of a pea.
The end of a nose ring? Is that small?
Like a nose ring nub?
Oh, I've
Yeah.
seen hers.
Oh, some people have like those little shiny nose rings, like those shiny pimples. That'd be a good one. Those little tiny ones that like you can barely just see the shine coming off the nose. That's about a good size. We're talking tiny, right? Tiny. But can I see that full entire mineral? Can I see that mineral, and would I be able to see the mineral that's next to it if they're all about half the size of a pea, half the size of a BB? The point is you can see that mineral crystal. When you're looking at it, if you can see a mineral crystal, it's considered to have coarse grain. So this is going to be called coarse grain. If it is extrusive, it's going to be considered fine grain. I'm using those words because when you start using that flow chart that's on your canvas, you're going to look at the words fine grain and coarse grain. And what that's going to relate to, is it intrusive or is it extrusive? Everybody understand coarse, extrusive, intrusive? I already went over that a lot, or in detail. All right, let's hit up mafic, felsic, and intermediate. Anybody ever heard these words before?
No.
You remember these words? No? Mafic. Mafic are dark minerals. Dark colors. Now, it's not the dark colors that you're normally used to. Rock colors are different. What I say is dark green, black, and some gray. And I'll write it with an A. I don't know, you can write it with an E, right? I write it with an A. Greens and blacks are your dark minerals, or your dark colors. If it's like a deep blue, that's not considered to be dark. If it's red, like most people think of a red or a brown to be dark, not when we're talking about rocks. The difference between all of these has to do with the amount of silica in the rock. What's the most abundant element on Earth? Silicone. What's the most common group of rocks that we talked about when we looked at the chemical formulas of those minerals? What's the most common mineral group? The silicates. The amount of silica is low. That's why they're dark. Their silica content is low. Their iron content, iron and magnesium, is high. So if you're going to go look at the elements that make up those rocks, their silica content is low, but their iron and magnesium is higher. Makes them dark. Oops. I might have to move into that a little. So you got dark colors. Well, what's the opposite of dark colors? You got your light colors. For rocks, your light colors are pink, clear, red, brown, white. If you look at the rock and your immediate impression that it's pink, it's felsic. If you look at the rock and your immediate impression is white, it's felsic. If you look at the rock and your immediate impression that it's green, it's mafic. If you look at the rock and the immediate impression is black, it's mafic. It's your immediate interpretation of that color. Don't stare at it and take a lot of time, right? You can make a snap judgment on the color really quickly. If it's pinkish clear, we're looking at felsic. If it is dark, which is greens and blacks, it's mafic. Like I said, they'll come in handy when we actually go to identifying those minerals, identifying these igneous rocks. So if I have mafic, which is dark colors, and I have light colors, oh, by the way, what do you think about the silica content? What do you think about the silica content and felsic rocks? Anyone? If silica goes down in mafic, what do you think is going to be in felsic?
Up high.
It's going to be higher. What about iron and magnesium? Those are going to be low. Get low, get low. So the full name for it is not inter, it's intermediate. What do you think we're going to have with intermediate? What do you think you're going to have with intermediate? It's a mix of colors, right? I usually refer to it as cookies and cream because you know what? I'm fat and I like to talk about food. When you think of cookies and cream ice cream, what do you think of? What color is the actual ice cream? It's kind of got white, but what's it got stuck inside of it? Got a bunch of little Oreo pieces, Oreo flecks, which make it like black, dark. So you have a mix. Say that again? What's a better example? What do you make them at Domino's? Because I don't know what you're talking about with marble running. I don't know, but the other one I think of is like the Hershey's, the white chocolate Hershey's bars, the white chocolate cookies and cream Hershey's bars. Because again, it's white with little specks of the dark and the black that are peppered throughout it. So I call it cookies and cream. It is a mix, right? So it's mafic, it's felsic, and it's intermediate. Go ahead and cut it.